Youth sports, an opportunity for kids to exercise, learn important lifelong skills, and for parents to release all their built-up anger by yelling at 18-year-old umpires. They've given us superstars like Simone Biles, Monet Davis, and this legend.
Hi, my name's Alfred D'Elia. At home they call me Big Al, and I hit dingers.
An industry that's been among the hardest hit by COVID has been sports. And let's not forget, it was in that field when many of us realized how serious COVID really was.
Now, Rudy spoke about the virus on Monday in a press conference, and as a joke, he made sure, here he goes, made sure to touch every media microphone as he left. 2 days later, he tested positive.
This had to have been the most selfish play in sports since Scottie Pippen stayed on the bench with 1.8 seconds left in the '94 playoffs. But following this incident, Adam Silver suspended the NBA season, which led to a ripple effect of cancellations. And though there's been little action since that decision, there's been no shortage of creativity. You love to see Mitch McConnell playing ball. And while not having professional sports gets all the attention in the media, the cancellation of youth sports has been largely overlooked, as millions of children sit at home without exercise. As a teenager, I can't find the ability to now get out of the house to exercise. Before quarantine, I used to also not find the ability to get out of the house to exercise. At least now I've got a legitimate excuse for looking as small as an appetizer at an expensive restaurant. You might be surprised to find out that youth sports is a $19 billion industry. To put it in perspective, that's more than any pro sports league, with the NFL next at $16 billion. And returning to play stands as an incredibly complex undertaking. While the leaders of pro sports leagues work together to determine whether they can return to play, youth sports programs are trying to figure out whether they'll be coming back at all. 45% of youth sports organizations are at risk of shutting down permanently due to COVID. And this would be incredibly harmful for children across the country. I had the chance to sit down with one of the leading doctors in sports medicine to learn more about the potential consequences. First, Dr. Cole, I'd like to thank you for the important work you've done over the past few months, spreading awareness on COVID. And mainly today, I'm hoping to gain some insight on the return of sports. Dr. Cole is an orthopedic sports medicine surgeon at Midwest Orthopedics at Rush, and also serves as team physician for the Chicago Bulls and White Sox. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be with me here today.
You're welcome, Ethan.
How do you see youth sports changing post-pandemic?
Well, I think that I think it's going to be region specific. I think there's going to be some areas where it might look the way it used to before we have a vaccine or effective treatment, and will simply look as if this never happened. I think that's possible in certain areas. When the R division rate gets down below 1 in certain areas, and things are under control. The problem is you can't control ingress and egress of other individuals to worsen the situation. Mm-hmm. But I think in other places, we're just not going to see it. It's going to be absent. I think with kids' sports, as passionate as people and their parents are about kids' sports, and especially as it relates to baseball coming up over the summer and so forth, over the summer and football starting in the fall, I think we're going to the decisions will be less. The $19 billion doesn't affect the parents and the families like the $19 billion affects those who are directly participating in professional sports. It's an astounding number, you're right. But the stakeholders are different. And when you're dealing with kids, families, and health, in the absence of any economic impact playing sports, my sense is that youth sports will probably be curtailed significantly, even if an opportunity was established that might otherwise be adopted by professional sports. I would sense that you may not see the same global adoption in youth sports.
And from a public health standpoint, that could have a significantly harmful effect, like on our country. Would you say so?
The absence of participation in youth sports?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will. It's a really valid point. And, we're dealing with obesity. We're already dealing with significant health issues because of the absence of activities and organized sports. I will tell you that as an orthopedic surgeon in sports medicine, I've seen a profound reduction in sports injuries. And people are not out doing things that otherwise lead to those injuries, which you can argue that's a good thing, but the trade-off is what you were alluding to, is the public health impact of obesity and loss of activity and self-esteem and staying out of trouble. And, kids are always better being in sports than not in sports, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Even at the risk of injury, in my opinion.
Now, there are three main issues with returning to play: cost, parental concerns, and infrastructure hurdles, which, incidentally, are the exact three main issues with convincing my parents to add this jungle gym into my bedroom. But unlike the pros, youth sports don't benefit from broadcast, sponsorship, or merchandising revenues. Operators are typically small businesses or nonprofits without any rainy day funds. And let's be honest, these haven't been rainy days. They've been interstellar apocalyptic type days. And the apocalypse has hit Black communities the hardest. According to one survey, only 58% of Black parents expect their child to resume to sports in the same level as before. Following the 2008 recession, team sports participation dropped from 45% in 2008 to 38% in 2014. And experts say that a downturn in the coming months could be a lot worse. Much of that decline has to do with access. For the past few decades, the youth sports model has held a huge divide that's been exacerbated by sports moving entirely out of the school and community environment and into the pay-to-play world. But COVID allows us to rethink and restructure the entire youth sports model, and it's an opportunity that needs to be capitalized on. So where does that start?
Well, we are, Parks and Recreation are really actively advocating for investment as part of federal stimulus, post-pandemic related federal stimulus in the form of infrastructure and workforce development. So the one policy I think that we're desperately needing is an infusion of capital. We know that we've had a historic inequity in terms of access to places to play. In fact, if you take urban settings alone, 1 in 3 people do not have access to a park within a 10-minute walk from home. And even if they do have access to a park, it's not necessarily a well-maintained, quality green space that's safe and welcoming. So we know that there is a tremendous backlog in terms of deferred maintenance and capital projects across the country, from local parks to state to national. And in just taking national, we've got an estimated over $60 billion backlog in terms of capital projects. So one of the things that we really are desperately in need of and urging is that investment in our local communities so that they can really start to address the historic inequities in terms of investment in community infrastructure, as well as create those spaces that are going to be so important to providing the access that we really want for youth sports.
It starts with municipal parks and school districts. Take the Detroit Red Wings as an example. Now, a few months ago, they announced a $1 million initiative to grow youth hockey in Detroit by partnering with public schools. And 30,000 kids will benefit from this. As a Blackhawks fan, I may have to rethink next time before chanting, "Detroit sucks." And while initiatives like these are great, schools need the support of federal policymakers, and they've been getting the opposite of that. The person in charge of the $30 billion from the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act is Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, or real-life Dolores Umbridge. This lady is so evil, she can't answer yes or no to some pretty simple requests.
Do you personally approve this? I think a yes or no will do. The $18 million cut of the funding for Special Olympics. Whoever came up with that idea at OMB gets a Special Olympic gold medal for insensitivity.
Senator, let me just...
Betsy, you just got da boss. And wait till you hear this exchange with a senator.
You can't say definitively today that guns shouldn't be in schools?
Well, I will refer back to Senator Enzi and the school that he was talking about in Wapiti, Wyoming. I think probably there, I would imagine that there's probably a gun in the school to protect from potential grizzlies.
And to those who go, well, Wapiti D, she really can't say that guns don't belong in schools, I respond, she's just exercising her right to bear arms. Also, fun fact, she owns a $40 million yacht. That's like if my deadbeat dad bought a Gucci wallet instead of paying for my tuition. Just wanted a basic education. Betsy, da boss. Now, she's directed millions of dollars designated for low-income students instead to be shared with wealthy private schools. The Bergen University in Canine Studies in California was allocated $500,000. The founder stated, "I think we are one of the most important educational institutions out there right now." Although I can think of one institution that's more important, and incidentally, it's the one that DeVos went to school, Trump University. Betsy DeVos. It's like DeVos is basically tossing out cash wherever she wants. I wouldn't be surprised if she saw canine studies and was like, ooh, I like dogs. Here's $500,000. I mean, guns in schools, slashing funds to Special Olympics, taking money out of public schools to give to random dog schools. It's almost like DeVos was given a job serving people she actually despises.
You know, I really hate children.
Letting DeVos decide where the pandemic money should go is about as responsible as supplying schools with guns to fight grizzly bears. All right, have we spent enough time going after DeVos? I'm hearing a no.
Because you know, deep down, you deserve to be punished.
But funds that DeVos wouldn't be able to touch would be from the COVID-19 Youth Sports and Working Families Relief Act, which would equip working families with the financial tools to bounce back from the economic crisis and help save the organizations. The Relief Act was introduced to Congress by this guy, who actually looks like a baseball. Now, you can take action by making sure the Relief Act gets traction in Congress by signing the letter, which I attached in the description. But in the meantime, youth sports needs a safe and fun alternative to play. So I thought of a solution during the pandemic.
We've got the Bubble Bouncer 3000. Ensures a safe play among children. Let's go to work.
And remember, we need to support the Youth Sports and Working Families Relief Act. Not only will it provide financial relief to support sports, recreation, and fitness-related activities, it'll also allow this legend to continue what he does best.
Hi, my name's Alfred D'Elia. At home they call me Big Al, and I hit dingers.